golfj.com.
Hey everybody, Jim Sinicropi here inside the FingerLakes1.com studios for another edition of the golfj.com podcast. And I've holding on the line one of the legendary personalities in the game of golf today, Damon Green, caddy for Zach Johnson, on the bag for his major championships last season. And so we're going to delve into a little bit about life on tour as a caddy and his relationship with Zach Johnson. He's been on the bag for Ryder Cups and a very accomplished player in his own right. So I guess without further ado, let me welcome Damon to the show. Damon, thanks for taking some time out for us today.
Well, yeah, no problem, Jim. Any friend of Eddie Boudreaux's is a friend of mine. So glad I could come on and talk about golf.
Well, I appreciate Booty setting this up for us, a mutual friend of ours, and I'm really excited because I've been a big fan of Zach Johnson and of yours. I've caddied not on the tour level, but I caddied for our club pro for many years, and I can appreciate the work that goes into it. And certainly on your level, there's a lot more work that goes into it. So with the Masters coming up, a tournament that you guys have won twice together, what type of preparation are you doing now for this year's Masters?
Well, we only won the Masters once in 07.
Oh, right. Yeah, British Open last year. My bad.
No worries. Well, I'm prepping by going to play golf right now. Trying to get my game sharp. Maybe it'll rub off on Zach.
I mean, a course like that, though, you guys know.
There's, we've been to the Augusta now. This will be our 13th year, and I was with Scott Hoke for 4 years playing the Augusta, and I pretty much got down what I need to know as far as course preparation, but now it just comes to executing shots and picking the right clubs for Zach, and trying to figure out the breaks to the greens and all that stuff, because it's a very difficult course. You have to be very precise with your irons. If you're not, you're left with some ridiculous chips or some ridiculous putts. So, you have to be really spot on that week to be in contention.
And talk about the working relationship on the course. Obviously, when you've been with a guy for several years, you have your own type of relationship. But I can remember in my days at caddy, I would pick and choose when I called my player off as something that he maybe wanted to do that I didn't agree with. How much of that goes on with you and Zach? Do you ever call him back and say, no, that's the wrong club or that's the wrong play?
We talk about pretty much every club. So not, very often does he just snatch a club out and hit it. We're a team out there, and if he's totally off on the club, I'll say, no, I like the other one as opposed to that one. And sometimes he'll call me off one. So it's a matter of how he's feeling with the club he's got to hit. And, we bounce that off of each other before we make our selection. So we're pretty dialed in when it comes to that. 13 years, I can pretty much fill in his sentences for him. And he can do the same with mine. It's sort of like a marriage,
Well, you're spending
15 years.
You're spending more time with him than your own family. A lot of times when you guys are out there, it's
exactly right.
And so it's important, I suppose, that relationship works good. And there are instances you see in the tour where a player mistreats his caddy, publicly, and it doesn't seem like that's ever something that you guys worry about. It seems like you got a great friendship and a great working relationship, and that leads to things like winning the British Open. It's you guys are very successful.
Well, he knows ultimately he's the one to make the decision in the end. Mm-hmm. And I just feed the information into his computer, and we talk about it, and he's the one that's got to pull the shot, execute it, and do all that. So a lot of these guys are blamers, and it bothers me to listen to it either on TV or while we're out there on the course, because the ultimate decision is theirs, and I think it's some players' way of dealing with the pressure and not to make themselves, I guess, feel what's the word, like they're not playing good. They want to keep themselves pumped up, so
Yeah.
they feel like if they blame the caddy, then they're not tearing themselves down. But there's a few guys out there that are caddy beaters and haters.
Well, so
You
much
just gotta deal with that.
so much of the game is mental. And have you noticed with your own player any changes that he's consciously tried to make in his mental approach to the game over the years? Or is he the same guy today as he was when you first picked up his bag?
Well, he's always been mentally tough. I mean, that's one of his attributes,
Mm-hmm.
and why he can compete with some of these guys that knock it 50 yards by him.
Right.
He's mentally tough, and he's got a sports psychologist, Dr. Mo Pickens, who really helps him to focus in on what he needs to do to be successful. And we built a whole team around Zach, and we all have input. We all meet every year, and we call it the summit, and we just talk about what we have to do to get better, what we need to work on for the next year, and really try to keep him motivated, on point.
So last year, hugely successful, and it's at a point too, I think, when a lot of people are expecting maybe Zach to tail off a little bit. He had maybe the best year of his career, a British Open championship. And I was watching at home on TV, and after he made the putt, your antics on the green were pretty well documented, and Zach was up and down the row of the fans. It just seemed like it was so like you guys were so comfortable and elated, obviously, to win this. What did that win mean to you personally and to Zach for his career?
Well, I get chill bumps when you just talk about it. It's I did like 4 or 5 interviews right after the win, and I was just choked up and crying in every one. So, to win at the home of golf, it's so special. And we've got 2 majors now, and we won the Masters in '07, and you never know if you're going to win another major. And to be able to win it at the home of golf, it meant so much to both of us. And, even while I was playing, you're always on the practice green trying to make 3 and 4 footers, say this is the win, the Masters, the British Open. And to watch my player just bow his neck and just compete like that, it was very fulfilling.
And on that particular golf course, in that particular event, maybe not one of the majors where people would say Zach was most suited to win, but boy, one of the things that is amazing about you guys is that your level of consistency. If Zach Johnson is entered in a tournament, he's the best bet on tour to finish top 20 and top 10. I mean, he doesn't have many off weeks. You don't have any reason why he can be so consistent compared to other players?
Well, he and his instructor, Bender, they sort of built his game around being consistent. He's not flashy. He doesn't hit it long. But when you drive it well and you chip well and wedge it well and putt pretty good, you're not going to be that far off week in and week out.
Yeah.
And he's got one of the greatest caddies in the world, so that may help too. No, kidding.
It's always tough, I suppose, as a caddy. How much credit does the caddy get? I mean, you're out there with him living and dying on every shot with him, there's a lack of control, I suppose, as a caddy, since you're not actually swinging the club and hitting those putts, but certainly totally vested in what your golfer's doing out there and how important. And I'm not even going to ask because I know you're humble. You're not going to want to take too much credit for Zach's success, but in general, how important is that caddy to that PGA Tour pro finding that right team?
Right. I think it's pretty important. If I was a player, I would want a caddy that has played before. And the trend is going more and more to that. Lance Tenbrook and I was one of the first couple of guys that went from playing to caddying. And it seems like it's catching on. I want somebody that's been in that situation before to know
Sure.
What your body's feeling like. Is there adrenaline pumping? Course management and what you need to do to, eliminate mistakes. And I'm not saying that somebody that hasn't played before can't do that, but I think it's just a lot easier when you've been in those situations. I mean, I've won 77 tournaments as a player on the mini tours and all around the country, and I just think it's a big advantage to have someone like that.
Yeah, certainly when you're talking about the situations out there, the player is nice to know that he's talking to someone that truly understands it, especially from the mental side as well. So now you have a legendary career as a player. You mentioned 77 mini tour wins. That's a lot, and obviously, continuing on as a player was something that you probably would have had success with as well. Who knows? Do you ever second guess yourself and say, geez, I wonder if I, had continued on here, if, I wouldn't have, won PGA Tour events as well and had an accomplished career?
Jim, I gave it from 1995 to, 1985 to 1999. So, I gave it my all and I did it. And I don't have any regrets at all that I quit. I can still play some on the Champions Tour now just to get my feel
That's
of
right, yeah.
competition. I go to tour school when I can. And
Senior U.S. Opens?
I did everything I could to make it. I missed about a 3.5 footer on the last hole at tour school to miss my par by one year. And I still have nightmares about it, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's a cruel game.
You never know what could have happened if I'd have made that putt or.
Well, yeah, it's you can always play the what if game, but what I think you'd probably rather do is just sit back and say how things have gone so well for you. You got to play professionally for several years and had so much success, but now you're part of you have major championships on the bag and Ryder Cups too. Some of the stuff that you've been able to experience from a first-hand basis maybe may not have materialized if you hadn't. And so talk a little bit about like the Ryder Cup as a caddy. Do you feel part of that U.S. team just as much as all the guys and the players? The caddies feel like part of that team as well when you fly over there?
Oh, yeah. My first Ryder Cup with Scott Hope was our captain was not as caddy friendly as the rest of them have been. They have pretty much made it a point to make us feel like part of the team now. And, we're invited into the player room and, we have dinners with the players. We have great parties Sunday night.
Yeah.
And they've done a really, really good job of making us feel part of it. I can't wait to win the one this year in Hazeltine. I think we've got a really good chance, and I think it's one of our goals to make sure we make that team. So,
well,
we have some phenomenal young players coming up, and I think they're going to give us a shot in the arm with their excitement, and it's the greatest tournament there is in the world. And if
Mm-hmm.
your people ever get a chance to go to a tournament, that would be the first one I would say you should go see. There's nothing like it in sport, that's for sure.
And compare that to the President's Cup, for example. President's Cup seems like a lot of fun. The competition's there too, but is it because it's just Europe versus U.S.? I mean, the President's Cup international team. I mean, what does KJ Choi have in common with Adam Scott, for example?
Right. Yeah, I think that's part of the issue. And a lot of times they have an influx of new players every year. There's maybe 2 or 3 that are on the same team year after year. And they're just not used to those formats like the Europeans are. The Europeans don't miss one thing about it. They know the formats, and their captains and a lot of their players play them year in and year out. It just kind of handed down, from team to team how you're supposed to play in the foursomes and the four ball. There's some strategies you need to use, and they really seem to do a good job at it. You have to play really well to beat them, and I look forward to taking home that Ryder Cup this summer.
And there's a lot of controversy with Captain Tom Watson last year, and my take was kind of like, well, I don't know, if the U.S. had won, Tom Watson would be beloved as a great captain. I think anytime you lose in any team sport too, it doesn't matter if it's basketball, football, you lose, and your coach or your captain is the one that kind of starts to take some of the blame and a lot of the second guessing. How do you feel about your captain heading into this event at Hazeltine?
Davis Love is going to do a great job. He did a great job in Chicago, and they had to really pull off a miracle there on Sunday to win it. They did it. Hats off to them.
Yeah.
That was very, very disappointing, and we wanted to win it for Davis Love, and we wanted to win it for Tom Watson too.
Sure.
But I think there was a couple of mistakes made in some of the pairings, and Tom Watson's kind of old school, and it was sort of like, this is my team, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think it came back and hit him in the butt.
Yeah, it's
decisions, but it all comes down to the players. If you're playing good and making putts, you're going to win, and if you're not, you're going to have a tough time. And the Europeans just, beat us handily. So,
do you think that the amount of European Tour players who are coming over and playing on the American Tour now, it's obviously hurt the European Tour, and they've tried several things to make their tour remain relevant, moving the championship to Dubai, big money, and all that. Do you think that that's ultimately going to hurt the Ryder Cup?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. Which, like you say, it's disappointing because that is, as much as any major championship we look forward to, that Ryder Cup every other year is just an event that I clear my schedule, make sure I can settle down in front of the TV and just take it all in. So, well, hey, Dave.
Yeah, I think it'll eventually hurt it. But, we need to win 4 or 5 in a row before that situation will come up, and they'll start talking about it probably. But,
yeah.
They have pride in their country, and we have pride in our country, and it just, like I said, comes down to who's playing the best.
So I kind of think that you go with, if Rory McIlroy plays on the PGA Tour, every single event, he was still born in England, so he would be Ryder Cup eligible. I think that one thing they might need to do, change the eligibility standards to, where the country you're a native born. But, I don't make those decisions, obviously.
Right. Well, they've got to make sure those guys play over there so they can at least, get some good sponsors and have, nice purses. And if they don't play over there, then that tour will fall by the wayside. So they have to look out for their own tour.
Yeah.
And those guys need to play over there, probably at least 15 times. I think they still have to do that, or that tour will be defunct.
So, looking, ahead to this season, which is already underway, it's funny. You got everybody's talking about the youth movement, and then you got Adam Scott winning a few tournaments in a row, and
Jason Day.
yeah, and a lot of people say Jason Day think he's a young guy. He's relatively old as a golfer, 28, 29 years old now, 29, I think. Um, it's who do you have time to follow the other players on tour? Like, do you ever get back in your room after the round or the tournament and kind of watch highlights, and you have guys that you root for beyond your own player?
Sure. The guys that are very friendly to you, and
Yeah.
that we play practice rounds with, you're always pulling for those guys. And this new young crop of golfers we have out there, all just like you see on TV. They're very, very nice. They're appreciative of what they have. They're open to the media, and they sign autographs. And it's really nice to see that they're continuing to keep our sport growing. And I think TV and the fans are loving it right now. Even though Tiger's not in the mix, I think they're stepping up and making it really interesting for the public. And I think there's going to be some good rivalries, going to come out of this. It's going to be good for golf.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I tell you, during those years that Tiger was so dominant, it was frustrating because, I like to see competitive golf. And it really, for a stretch there, he was kind of turning back all the competitors that would go ahead. He was just, for that period of time, he was so much better than everybody else. Do you think that if these young players now, who may be a result of watching Tiger play, saying, geez, this is how good we got to be if we want to win tournaments, do you think that if these players now played against Tiger in his prime, that they would have been competitive with Tiger then?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of get that feel too.
Basically, Tiger Woods reborn, except he drives it straighter.
and there's 8 or 10 of these kids.
He's got the putting like Tiger,
mm-hmm.
and he hits it tremendously long. And he's got all the tools to just, whether or not his body holds up. Seems like he's hurt all the time now, so he just needs to, keep his body in good form, and he'll go a long way.
So when you and Zach tee it up against Jason Day or Rory McIlroy in the final round, and that you're giving up so much distance on the tee, do you even speak of it, or do you just know that Zach knows how to handle that type of situation?
Well, we sit there and we shake our head like, wow, look at that shot.
Right.
Wow, that's awesome. But still, it comes down to getting it in the hole. And if we can stick our 6-iron inside of his 9-iron, put a little heat on him,
mm-hmm.
then we're always going to be hitting first.
Sure.
If you execute your irons and put a little heat on them that way, then a lot of times you'll see them guys crumble.
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, look at it that way. You're hitting first, and you get to, and you get up to, no matter how far the green was, you get up to the green, and you're both putting from 10 feet, or he's putting before you. That's a great side of it too. And another reason why I think it was so great to see you guys win at St. Andrews with the way people are talking now about lengthening golf courses and changing the golf ball and stuff, to get a guy like Zach Johnson, who's not known for his length, but more as a technician, to win, such a great tournament like that. It really, I think, kind of maybe push back some of those folks that have been calling for that. How do you feel about that? Do you think they need to change the golf ball or change these golf courses at all?
No, I don't think so. Say we've got the new equipment, the new ball, and we go play Hilton Head. We go play Colonial. I mean, they haven't hardly touched those courses at all.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the scores are single digits to barely double digits.
Right.
So length doesn't necessarily equate to higher scores. I think the way you build them, maybe some dog legs, some smaller greens, and that's the equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they just need to put more thought into the way they design courses. I think there won't be any issues at all. I think it's fun to watch a guy hit it 340 yards myself.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, this guy steps up on a 370-yard downhill par four, and they're rolling it on the front of the green. Certainly, that's what gets fans excited. But personally, I get excited by seeing a guy like Zach Johnson win the Open. I love it, and I love watching you guys play. I love watching you on the bag, being friends with Ed Boudreau. I've always been a big fan of yours, and a guy who caddied when I was younger, which I just always kind of enjoyed watching that caddy-player relationship out there, and I've had no more fun than anybody than watching and cheering for you and Zach. So good luck in Augusta next week.
Thank you.
And we'll be rooting for you, and I really appreciate you taking out some time out of your day to chat with me.
Thanks for having me on, Jim.
All right, we'll be watching you, and we'll catch up with you down the road.
Hey, buddy.
golfj.com